Hi guys and girls on YouTube, and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about woodworm. Now while this is not my specialist subject, I have gained a little bit of experience with it over the last few years, and we're going to show you some tips on making sure your radio doesn't have woodworm. But the big problem is, if your radio does have woodworm, you don't want, especially in a place like this when I've got lots of TVs and radios knocking about, you don't want woodworm flying about in here. So I've found out a way to contain it, and if you watch this video right till the very end, I'll show you some live woodworm which you might not have seen before. But this all started when a lady gave me this radio, and it had quite a few woodworm holes in it, and around the holes is like a powdery deposit. Now that usually indicates that the woodworm's left recently. And what can happen is they can come back and they can lay eggs in the holes that are already there, and then the process starts all over again. So I'm just using this radio as a quick example. This is not the exact one that the lady gave me. We'll come to that in a bit. This is one it doesn't have woodworm. Now it is actually in quite poor condition. This is just some other old thing that somebody gave me, but the point is, if this radio has woodworm, you don't know it's got woodworm until a load of holes appear in it. Now the obvious thing is, what you need is some woodworm killer. Now this is the one I'm using. I found this okay, but the problem is you can paint the woodworm killer on the insides and down here, but I've been told that if you paint it straight onto here, there's different brands of woodworm killer, and some can actually destroy this finish. Now if this was in perfect condition, you wouldn't want to destroy all that just in case you hadn't got woodworm, because obviously if it's got woodworm it's going to destroy it anyway. But let me show you this method I've come up with, and it seems to work so far. Now I did have this idea once that if you wrap things in cling film, and we'll come over there, there's a couple of radios there wrapped in cling film. I had this idea, if you wrapped it in, that would contain the woodworm, if it had woodworm, but I've since found out that they just chew straight through the plastic, because I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and that had Rexine, is it called, on the outside, and they chewed all through that. But what it does do, if you wrap it in cling film, it stops any woodworm getting in if it's not already got woodworm. But if you suspect something's got woodworm, you need to contain it. I don't want woodworm flying around in here. So let me show you this method I've come up with, and so far it's been good. So the actual radio that the lady gave me was in very poor condition. It was full of holes anyway. So what I did, because you're not going to destroy the cabinet anymore, I just painted woodworm killer straight on all the cabinet, and then I wrapped it in cling film, because if you've got woodworm inside, it says on the internet that the life of a woodworm's about 2 weeks. So ideally you need to keep the woodworm in as long as possible so it can ingest the poison and it dies. Now once again, this is just a tatty old radio. I've taken an example, but let's pretend that this is in absolutely mint condition. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to put anything on this surface and destroy the surface. And by the way, that's not woodworm, that's moths on my jumper. Yeah, so let's pretend this is in mint condition. Now obviously what you do is you take the back off and you treat all the inside of the cabinet with woodworm killer, but on the outside you don't want to put it on this surface, because you're going to damage it, or at least discolour it if you don't damage it. So what I do first is I wrap the radio in cling film, a couple of layers of cling film, and then you take your woodworm killer and you brush it on some newspaper. So what we're doing is we're soaking the whole of this newspaper in woodworm killer, and then leave it overnight till it all dries out. Now put plenty on so it soaks all the way in, every bit of paper, like that. So the next day, when your paper's dry, you wrap it all round this radio. Now, I've got one sheet here, but you put 2 or 3 on, that's even better. Wrap it all round your radio, soaked in woodworm killer that's dried, and then you wrap all that again with cling film. So then we end up with something looking like that. Now the woodworm killer is on the paper, which is not in contact with the cabinet itself, which means you're not going to cause any damage to the cabinet. Now I've read on the internet that the life cycle of a woodworm is about 3 years. So once it's been quarantined like this, you need to let it stand for 3 years. But before I actually let it stand, I've got another one I've done earlier, which I'm going to show you. I'm going to place this in another cardboard box. Once again, here's some I've done earlier. So then you place your radio in another outer cardboard box, wrapped with a bit of cling film, and put a label on to say it's been treated, and the date that you've actually treated it, so then you know when you can reopen it. Now there's a very good reason I've done that. Now I don't actually know how effective this is, but I've read that once the worm's actually hatched, it only has a life of about 2 weeks to mate and relay fresh eggs. So by putting that extra cardboard layer on, we've got another protection that if any did get through, or you've missed any woodworm killer, or it didn't work, the woodworm, by the time it's chewed through the cardboard box and all the different layers, that's going to be more than 2 weeks, so the chances are it's dead anyway, because the exercise of this is to contain the woodworm if you've got a radio or woodworm. Right, let's just clear up some confusion first before anybody says anything. So it starts with the fly lays the egg, that turns into a woodworm, that stays in the wood for about 3 years, and then when it emerges, it only has about 2 weeks left to live when it's in the fly form. It's just in case anybody notices the mistake I made in the video. Anyway, so let's come back to this. Now this is the radio that the lady gave me. Now it was in very poor condition because it already had woodworm, so I just painted the woodworm killer straight onto the cabinet, and I wrapped it in cling film. So let's just uncover that now and have a look. So if you look at this now, you'll see, let's have a look there, that some woodworm have actually chewed through the woodworm killer, which is on the outside. They've chewed through the plastic and they've actually exited and flown away. And it's for that reason that when you've done this treatment, I think you're better off putting it in an outer cardboard box, you know, a thick box, because by the time they chewed through that, they'd be dead anyway. But you can see holes in here where some have actually exited. Now they didn't actually get too far because most of them were on the floor dead, but that is a good reason why you need to put that in another external cardboard box. So let's just rip all this cling film off now, and we can look. See, there's some dead woodworm that have just dropped out. Let's get the cling film off and have a good look. And if we move around to this side, you can see holes there where they've actually come through the plastic, and you know that's even after they've ingested the woodworm killer. Right, let's unwrap it. So let's get it in focus. There you can see some whole woodworms have actually hatched out, and they're stuck between the plastic layers. They've died in between the plastic. Now, get that in focus. If you look there, you can actually see some flies have actually died in the hole before they've even emerged. But you can see the mess it's made. If you look at that now, these are all dead woodworm flies that have all been contained within this plastic. In fact, I'll see if I can get one under my phone so we can have a look at it. Now, according to the internet, there's lots of different types of woodworm beetles. These are called I think they call the common furniture beetle. I've actually looked them up. Right, so there we go. That's on my phone using as a magnifier. That was the beetle ready, well there's two there, but that was the beetle ready to fly away. Oh, hang on. Right, got a better picture there. There you see, they're two ready to fly. Now deceased, but you can see how many there were, and that's not counting the ones that are found on the floor next to the radio. It's probably not too clear on the camera, but there are still a lot inside these holes, like there, that haven't actually managed to come out, but you can see them there trapped in the holes. That's a pretty good example there. Let's have a look. Yeah, just there. So I've just scrapped this Dansette record player, and that's all there is left of it. Now I don't like scrapping things at all, but the reason I broke this up is because it had a very, very bad woodworm infestation, and it was so bad that all the cabinet, it just crumbled to powder in your hands. You can see some bits of powder here from where the case is. Now it's all safely wrapped up in that box and it's going to the tip, but I suspected that this record player still got live woodworm inside, and I don't think there's too many people have actually seen live woodworm. Most people see woodworm when it turns into a fly and it pops out the hole and flies away. So I've actually broke some bits up, and I did indeed find some live woodworm inside, so let's just take a look at it in action. Right, so here's some parts of the cabinet. Now if we look, let's get this zoomed in and get a tool to point with. If you look just there, you can see a woodworm in a hole munching away at the wood. Now there was quite a few live woodworm. I've popped a few out so you can see. This is all that's left of the cabinet. There, them little white grubs, they're live woodworm. And if we have a look down here, let's see, there's some moving about. There, you can see it moving there. So that is what the woodworm looks like before it turns into a fly, and it flies out of the wood and exits. Now woodworm is not my expertise, but I've read on the internet that what happens is they fly out the hole, they mate, and then quite often they will relay more eggs back in the holes they've come out of. But you can see there, that's your live woodworm moving about. And interestingly enough, there is one just there, that black one, that's one that's actually turned into a fly, and for some reason it's not flown out the hole, it's actually died staying in the wood itself. And there are quite a few more over here if you look. So that's what your woodworm looks like when it's inside the wood eating away before it turns itself into a fly. And here we can see the one that's in the hole is actually showing its head now, look. Now this isn't the best of pictures, but I've put 3 on a piece of wood under a microscope. Now the interesting thing I have learnt about woodworm, live woodworm, if you pull one out of its hole, even if you sit it on top of a piece of wood, it doesn't attempt to make a new hole. It just gets smaller and smaller, and then it shrivels up and expires. So most of the ones in here, that's quite a few months since we looked at the live woodworm. I think there's probably only one that was still in the hole. The others have all like shriveled up. Alright guys and girls on YouTube, many thanks for watching my video, and I'll catch you in the next one. I hope you found that interesting. Goodbye.